The sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Route 17, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts across the roadside diner. Dust swirled in lazy eddies, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and exhaust. There, on a splintered wooden crate beside the highway, sat a little girl no older than 8, her faded sundress patched with mismatched fabric. Her name was Lily, though no one passing by would ever ask. She clutched a bouquet of wilted daisies and sunflowers, their petals drooping like forgotten dreams, and held them up to the occasional car that blurred past without a glance. Her small voice, barely audible over the rumble of engines, called out, "Flowers for $1, pretty flowers." But the world rushed on, indifferent, leaving her alone with the weight of a backpack too heavy for her shoulders and eyes that spoke of nights spent wondering where home had gone. It was just another afternoon in the forgotten stretch of desert highway, where truckers grabbed coffee and kept driving, where the horizon promised nothing but more emptiness. Lily's hands trembled as she waved at the next vehicle, a dusty sedan that swerved slightly but didn't stop. A tear traced a clean line down her dust-streaked cheek. She wasn't begging. Her mother had taught her pride before vanishing into the haze of bad choices and worse luck. But the money was for bus fare, for a chance to find the aunt in the city who'd promised to take her in. Promises, Lily had learned young, were as fragile as the stems she sold. The crate wobbled under her, and she steadied it with a sigh, her small frame silhouetted against the blazing sky. That's when the thunder came. Not from the clouds, but from the earth itself. A low growl built in the distance, growing into a symphony of roaring engines that vibrated through the ground like an earthquake. Lily froze, her bouquet forgotten in her lap as the first bike crested the rise. Then another and another, until a convoy of 32 Harley-Davidsons thundered into view, their chrome gleaming like polished armor under the sun. Leather-clad riders, faces weathered by wind and time, formed a rolling wall of black and steel. At their head was Ethan Harlan, a man whose scars told stories he never shared. Lost brothers in a war long past, a wife taken by illness before she could see their dreams take root. His graying beard framed eyes that had seen too much betrayal, but today they narrowed on the roadside figure. The bikes slowed as one, a choreographed halt that kicked up gravel like sparks from a forge. Ethan killed his engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the girl's wide-eyed stare. She scrambled to her feet, clutching the flowers like a shield, unsure if this was rescue or ruin. The riders fanned out, forming a protective semicircle, their vests emblazoned with the faded emblem of the Iron Oath, a promise etched in ink and blood, sworn among men who'd chosen family over fate. Ethan dismounted, his boots crunching on the parched earth, and approached slowly, hands open to show he meant no harm. "Hey there, kid," he said, his voice gravelly but kind, like thunder softened by rain. "Those flowers look like they've seen better days. What's a little warrior like you doing out here all alone?" Lily hesitated, her lower lip quivering. The other riders watched, engines idling like watchful guardians, but none moved closer. She'd heard stories of men on bikes, rough, dangerous, but these ones didn't leer or laugh. They just stopped for her. I'm selling them," she whispered, holding out a daisy. "To get to the city. My mommy said Aunt Grace would help, but she's gone." The words tumbled out, heavy with the ache of abandonment, and Ethan's jaw tightened. He knelt to her level, the scent of leather and motor oil mingling with the flower's faint sweetness. In that moment, something stirred in him. An echo of his own lost promises, the oath he'd made to a fallen comrade to protect the innocent no matter the cost. He took the flower gently, tucking it into his vest pocket. "Gone where?" he asked, though he suspected the answer. Lily's eyes darted to the backpack, stuffed with a few crumpled clothes and a photo of a smiling woman. "She left last week. Said she'd be back, but..." The landlord came, and now I have to go. Ethan's gaze hardened, not at her, but at the invisible chains of a world that let children slip through cracks. He stood, signaling to his second-in-command, a burly veteran named Marcus, whose own tattoos hid shrapnel scars from the same war. "Boys," Ethan called, his voice carrying the weight of command, "we've got a detour." The convoy didn't question it. These were men bound by more than roads, by the Iron Oath, a pact forged in the fires of regret and redemption. Ethan had walked away from the club life once, after his wife's death, burying himself in quiet repairs at a desert garage, but a single call from an old brother 2 months back had pulled him back, a promise to stand for the forgotten. Now, staring at Lily's hopeful face, he felt that vow ignite again. "Hop on, kid," he said, lifting her onto his bike with the ease of handling fragile cargo. She clung to him, the bouquet pressed between them. As the engines roared back to life, they rode not toward the city, but to the nearest town, a speck called Dust Haven, where whispers of corruption lingered like smoke. Ethan didn't know it yet, but Lily's story unraveled threads tied to his past, a network of shadows that preyed on the vulnerable, echoing the betrayals he'd buried. As the bikes carved through the twilight, the desert wind whipping their faces, Lily waved one last daisy at the fading sun. In that gesture, a new promise formed, silent and unbreakable. These riders weren't just passing through. They were her shield, and in protecting her, they'd reclaim a piece of their own shattered honor. The diner faded in the rear view, but the image lingered. A child saved from the roadside abyss by thunder on 2 wheels. What waited in Dusthaven would test them all, forcing Ethan to confront ghosts he'd long outrun. For now, though, the road ahead hummed with purpose, the first spark of a fire that would burn through lies and draw lines in the sand. If this tale's already gripping your heart, smash that like button now. It fuels stories like this reaching more souls in need of hope. The engine's roar softened to a steady hum as the convoy crested the final rise into Dusthaven, the town's lights flickering like distant stars against the encroaching dusk. The air grew thicker here, laced with the tang of sagebrush and the faint, acrid bite of old fires, remnants of a place that had burned through too many second chances. Dusthaven wasn't much. A cluster of weathered buildings huddled around a main drag, where neon signs buzzed half-heartedly over boarded-up shops, and a single motel that promised clean sheets but delivered regrets. Ethan led the pack, Lily's small arms wrapped tight around his waist, her cheek pressed against the worn leather of his jacket. The vibration of the Harley seeped into her bones, a rhythmic comfort she'd never known, chasing away the chill of the roadside solitude. They pulled into the gravel lot of the Dusthaven Sheriff's Station, a squat brick building with peeling paint and a flag drooping in the still air. The other riders dismounted in unison, their boots thudding like muffled drumbeats, forming a loose perimeter without a word. Marcus, ever the sentinel, scanned the shadows, his hand resting lightly on the handlebars of his bike, ready for whatever ghosts this town might stir. Ethan eased Lily down, her feet touching ground that felt foreign after the thrill of the ride. She clutched her backpack strap, eyes wide as she took in the group, 32 strong, faces etched with quiet resolve, vests bearing the Iron Oath emblem, a clenched fist around a broken chain, symbol of bonds forged in defiance. "Stay close, kid," Ethan murmured, his voice low to mask the storm brewing inside him. He'd ridden these roads before, back when the Oath was young and the wars fresh. Promising brothers, they'd watch each other's backs, against the world's sharper edges, but Dusthaven held echoes of a betrayal he'd sealed away. A case from years past, where a young informant had vanished after pointing fingers at local power brokers. The name Grace, Lily's aunt, tugged at a frayed memory, like a thread pulling loose from an old scar. He shook it off, focusing on the girl. "We're gonna find out where your aunt is. You got a last name for her?" Lily nodded, her voice a whisper carried on the cooling breeze. Grace Harlan. She said she'd always be there if things got bad. The words hit Ethan like gravel under tires, skidding through his defenses. Harlan, his own name, shared by blood he hadn't spoken to in decades. His sister Grace, the one who'd cut ties after their father's fall from grace in some small-town scandal, blaming the family's wayward paths. Could it be? The coincidence burned, but he kept his face steady, kneeling again to meet her gaze. Grace Harlan, huh? Small world. Let's see what we can dig up. Inside the station, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows on linoleum floors scarred by years of hurried boots. Deputy Carla Ruiz, a no-nonsense woman with a badge pinned over a faded uniform, looked up from her desk, her coffee mug pausing mid-sip. The air smelled of stale paperwork and machine oil, the kind that clung to everything in a town like this. She eyed the influx of leather and chrome outside the window, her expression shifting from boredom to wary caution. Evening, folks. Station's closing soon. What brings a pack like yours to Dust Haven? Ethan stepped forward, Lily peeking from behind his leg, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. Looking for information on a Grace Harlan, this girl's aunt. Says she was supposed to take her in, but things went sideways. He slid a photo from Lily's backpack, the one of her mother, smiling in better days, across the counter, careful not to overwhelm. Carla's eyes narrowed, scanning the image, then flicking to Lily. A flicker of recognition crossed her face, quickly masked. Harlan? Yeah, I know the name. Runs a little flower shop on Elm Street, or did. Closed up last month after some trouble with the landlord. Rough stuff, eviction notices, debts piling up, girl's mum. She had her share of bad breaks. Lily's grip tightened on Ethan's hand, her small palm damp with unspoken fears. Is Aunt Grace okay? Mummy said she'd come for me. Carla hesitated, glancing at the clock as if time itself conspired against truths. Outside, the bikes idled like patient beasts, their low growl a reminder that these weren't tourists passing through. She's around, last I heard, staying at the Blue Horizon Motel, end of town. But listen, this town's got its own messes. Folks stirring up noise about missing kids, folks like this one slipping through. If you're family, go check, just keep it civil. Ethan nodded, but his instincts screamed otherwise. Civil, in the place where whispers of corruption hung heavy, like the dust that never settled. He'd seen it before, the way small towns shielded bigger sins, authorities turning blind eyes to those who preyed on the fragile. As they stepped back into the twilight, Marcus fell in beside him, his voice a rumble. That deputy, she's holding back. Saw it in her eyes, same look she had when we rolled through years ago, before everything went south with that informant kid. The convoy reformed, engines firing up with a collective snarl that echoed off the buildings. Lily climbed back onto Ethan's bike, her earlier fear easing into a tentative trust, the scent of wildflowers still clinging to her hair. They rolled toward the motel, the road unspooling under neon glows and shadowed alleys. Ethan felt the weight of old oaths pressing in, the promise to his fallen brother to stand for the voiceless, the one to Grace, unspoken but lingering, to mend what family fractures had torn. Dust Haven's underbelly stirred now, invisible hands reaching from the dark. A black sedan idled at the corner, its tinted windows watching their passage, but Ethan didn't flinch. The oath rode as one, a thunderous vow against the gathering storm. At the Blue Horizon, the parking lot was a graveyard of rusted pickups and faded signs, the office light spilling yellow onto cracked pavement. Ethan cut the engine, the silence amplifying the distant hum of the desert night. Lily slid off, her eyes searching the doors for a familiar face. "What if she's not here?" she asked, voice small but steady, mirroring the resilience Ethan recognized in his own mirrored scars. He placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture firm yet gentle. "Then We keep looking, that's what family does, chosen or not. They approached room 7, the door chipped and ajar, as if inviting secrets. A knock echoed unanswered, then voices from within, low, urgent, laced with tension. Ethan's hand hovered near his belt, not for threat, but readiness. As the door creaked open, revealing a woman with tired eyes and a resemblance that hit like a gut punch, the pieces began to align. Grace Harlan stood there, older, wearier, but unmistakably kin. "Ethan," she breathed, shock rippling across her features. Lily gasped, rushing forward. "Aunt Grace!" But joy fractured fast. Behind Grace, shadows shifted. A man in a rumpled suit, his face half-lit, eyes cold as the encroaching night. "Who the hell are you people?" he snarled, stepping into view. Ethan recognized the type, enforcer for the shadows that owned Dusthaven's debts, the same breed that had silenced voices before. The air thickened with unspoken threats, the bikers tensing outside like a coiled spring. In that charged moment, promises old and new collided, pulling Ethan into a reckoning he couldn't outride. Lily's hand found his again, a tiny anchor in the gathering tempest as the first threads of corruption unraveled at their feet. The door to room 7 swung wider under Ethan's steady push, the hinges creaking like a warning in the humid motel air. Inside, the space was a cramped tableau of faded desperation. A sagging bed with rumpled sheets, a flickering lamp casting erratic shadows on peeling wallpaper, and the faint scent of stale cigarette smoke mingling with cheap perfume. Grace Harlan froze in the threshold, her hand still on the knob, eyes widening as recognition dawned like a slow sunrise. She was thinner than Ethan remembered, her once vibrant hair now streaked with grey and pulled into a hasty knot, but the family resemblance cut deep. Same sharp jawline, same haunted gaze that mirrored his own after too many sleepless nights. Lily broke free first, darting past him with a cry that pierced the tension. "Aunt Grace, I found you!" Grace dropped to her knees, enveloping the girl in a fierce hug, her arms trembling as sobs escaped in quiet bursts. The man in the suit, broad-shouldered, with a tie loosened like a noose half-tied, stepped forward from the dim corner, his face a mask of calculated irritation. He was in his 40s, slicked back hair gleaming under the light, a gold watch catching the glow like a predator's eye. "I said, who the hell are you?" His voice was smooth but edged, the kind that commanded boardrooms or back alleys with equal ease. Ethan held his ground, Lily's small form now shielded behind Grace, the biker's presence outside a low rumble that vibrated through the thin walls. "Ethan," Grace whispered, pulling back just enough to search his face, disbelief warring with a flicker of old resentment. "After all this time? How?" She rose slowly, one hand lingering on Lily's shoulder, the other brushing away tears that traced paths down her cheeks. Ethan met her eyes, the years between them collapsing in that single look, childhood promises whispered under desert stars. The vow to always protect their own, shattered when their father's scandals tore the family apart. He'd left for the service, then the roads, burying the pain in engine roars and brotherly oaths. Grace had stayed, fighting to rebuild, only to end up here, entangled in Dusthaven's web. "Heard about a girl needing her aunt," he said evenly, his voice a gravel anchor. "Turns out, blood calls louder than I thought." The man, Victor Kane, though Ethan didn't know the name yet, crossed his arms, his cologne sharp and overpowering in the close quarters. "This is a private matter. Grace owes the house. Debts from that flower shop flop. We're discussing terms, not hosting a family reunion." His gaze flicked to the window, where silhouettes of riders loomed like statues in the night, engines idling with purposeful menace. Outside, Marcus signaled subtly, his hand gesturing for the crew to hold position, a silent pact that no one crossed their line without consequence. Ethan stepped inside fully, the door clicking shut behind him, sealing the room in charged intimacy. Terms. Sounds like pressure. Lily here's been out on the highway, selling weeds to scrape bus fare. Her mom's gone, left her high and dry. You gonna tell me that's not connected to whatever house you're collecting for? Grace's face paled, her fingers tightening on Lily's dress. It's not what you think, Ethan. The shop. It was all I had after Mom passed. But the landlord, Victor, works for him, kept hiking the rent. Then those collectors showed up, said if I didn't pay, they'd take everything. Lily's mom, Sarah. She got mixed up in it too, borrowing to cover my shortfalls. I was coming for her, I swear, just needed one more day. Her voice cracked, the weight of broken promises evident in every syllable. Lily looked up, confusion etching her young features. Mommy said you'd fix it, Aunt Grace. But the bad men came to our house. Victor's laugh was short, devoid of humor, echoing off the walls like a ricochet. Bad men? Kid, life's full of debts. Grace knows the score. Sign over the deed and we're square. No need for drama or company. He nodded toward the door, but Ethan didn't budge, his stance unyielding, the iron oath burning in his chest like an old ember reignited. This wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was the echo of every voiceless soul he'd failed to shield, every brother lost to shadows like these. The wars had taught him corruption's face, faceless suits profiting from the fallen, and Dusthaven reeked of it, a town where justice bent to the highest bidder. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Lily's head, a gesture of quiet claim. The score's changing tonight. We're taking the girl out of here, and you're gonna back off. Whatever hold your boss has, it ends with family stepping up. Victor's eyes narrowed, assessing the threat. But the distant growl of bikes shifting gears outside gave him pause. Grace stood taller, a spark of the sister Ethan remembered flickering back. Ethan's right. I won't let them take Lily too. The promises we made as kids, maybe it's time to keep one. She turned to Victor, voice steadying. Tell your people we're done. I'll find another way. The room hung in suspense, the air thick as the desert heat before a storm. Victor hesitated, phone halfway from his pocket, weighing the odds. 32 riders against one call for backup. Ethan's gaze never wavered, a silent vow etched in the lines of his face. Honor over force, truth over threats. Finally, Victor pocketed the device, forcing a smirk. Fine. But this ain't over. Debts don't vanish because of sentiment. He brushed past Ethan, slamming the door on his way out, the impact rattling the frame like a final warning shot. Grace sank onto the bed, pulling Lily close, the girl's head nestling against her. Ethan lingered by the window, watching Victor's sedan peel away into the night, taillights fading like retreating predators. Marcus knocked softly, entering with a nod. Road's clear, boss. But that guy's trouble. Saw his type before, connected to the old mill crew, the ones shaking down half the county. Ethan turned, the weight of reunion mixing with rising dread. Grace looked up, gratitude and guilt mingling in her eyes. Thank you. For her. For us. But as Lily yawned, safe for the first time in days, Ethan felt the pull of deeper shadows. Dusthaven's corruption ran like roots under the surface, tying back to his own buried past, the informant kid from years ago, silenced by men like Victor. Saving Lily meant digging it all up, honoring the oath in ways that could shatter everything. Outside, the convoy waited, engines humming under the stars, a family forged in steel and silence. Ethan stepped into the cool night, the scent of sagebrush grounding him. Grace and Lily would ride with them to a safe spot, a neutral garage on the outskirts, away from prying eyes. But as they mounted up, the first raindrops pattered on the pavement, washing dust from the air and stirring the ground. Promises, like storms, had a way of breaking loose, and Ethan's resolve hardened with the downpour. The road ahead twisted toward confrontation, where loyalty would be tested and redemption carved from the heart of betrayal. Lily waved from Grace's sidecar rig, a small smile breaking through, as the thunder of bikes rolled once more, chasing justice through the veil of night. The rain came down in sheets now, turning the motel's gravel lot into a slick mirror of the stormy sky. Ethan's boots splashed through shallow puddles as he helped Grace secure Lily in the sidecar of Marcus's bike, the girl's wide eyes reflecting the erratic flash of lightning that split the horizon. The air hummed with the scent of wet earth and ozone, a cleansing bite that cut through the motel's lingering staleness. Grace climbed onto the rig beside her niece, her hands steady despite the tremor in her voice, pulling a spare jacket over Lily's shoulders. "We'll be okay," she murmured, more to herself than anyone, as the engines ignited in a staggered chorus, drowning out the downpour's relentless patter. The convoy surged forward, headlights piercing the veil of water like lances through fog. Ethan led, his Harley cutting a path along the rain-slicked backroads that skirted Dusthaven's edges, avoiding the main drag where Victor's allies might lurk. The town receded in the mirrors, its neon haze blurring into the night. But Ethan felt its pull like a hook in his gut. Grace's revelation had cracked open doors he'd nailed shut years ago. Their father's downfall, a web of local graft that had swallowed honest work and spat out ruins. Saving Lily wasn't just a detour. It was a reckoning, pulling him back into the fray he'd sworn off after burying his wife and his regrets in the desert sands. They reached the garage on the outskirts after 20 tense minutes, a nondescript bunker of corrugated metal hidden behind a stand of Joshua trees. It was one of the Oath's safe havens, stocked with tools, cots, and enough provisions to weather a siege. The riders dismounted in the downpour, water streaming from leathers like silver veins, forming a human shield as they ushered Grace and Lily inside. The door groaned open to reveal a space lit by hanging bulbs, the air thick with the familiar tang of grease and rubber. Tools hung in orderly rows on pegboards, and a pot of coffee bubbled on a hot plate, its steam curling like unspoken questions. Marcus flipped on the space heaters, chasing the chill from the concrete floor, while two riders, Joshua and Nathan, both quiet types with ink from the same war, set up cots in the back room. Lily, towel drying her hair under Grace's watchful eye, wandered to a workbench cluttered with bike parts, her fingers tracing the curve of a chrome handlebar. "Do you fix things here?" she asked Ethan, who knelt to her level, wiping rain from his beard. "Yeah, kid, things that are broken. Machines mostly, but sometimes people too." His words carried the weight of the oath, the pact that had kept these men tethered through losses that no engine could mend. Grace sat on a stool, nursing a mug of coffee, her gaze distant as the rain drummed on the roof like impatient fingers. Ethan joined her, the space between them charged with years of silence. "Talk to me. Grace, Victor, that wasn't just about rent. What's the real hold?" She sighed, the sound heavy as the storm outside. It started small. The flower shop was Dad's dream after everything. But the mill owners, big shots with ties to the county, started buying up land, pushing folks out. Victor's their fixer. Sarah, Lily's mom, she worked for me, got in deep borrowing to keep us afloat. They threatened to take the kid if we didn't pay up. I was scraping together the last bit when you showed. Ethan's jaw clenched, the pieces slotting into a familiar puzzle. The mill. He'd heard whispers during his last pass through Dusthaven years back, when the Oath had tried to help that informant kid expose the land grabs. The boy had vanished, his warnings dismissed as troublemaking, leaving a trail of silence that still haunted Ethan's dreams. This ties back to the old mess, doesn't it? The one that split us. Grace nodded, tears mixing with the steam from her mug. Dad got caught in it, framed for skimming, but it was them covering their tracks. I blamed you for leaving, for choosing the roads over family. But you're here now, for her. The door banged open, admitting a gust of wind, and Daniel, one of the younger riders, his face flushed under the dripping helmet. Boss, we've got company. That sedan from the motel. It's circling the perimeter. And I spotted another rig, unmarked, parked near the old access road. The room tensed, hands instinctively checking pockets for what tools doubled as defenses. Ethan stood, the fire of resolve igniting in his chest. This wasn't random. Victor's retreat had been a feint, buying time to rally the shadows. The oath's code demanded no first strike, but protection was non-negotiable. A promise etched deeper than scars. "Form up!" Ethan ordered, his voice cutting through the rain's roar like a blade. The riders moved with practiced efficiency, positioning bikes to block the approaches, their silhouettes stark against the storm-lit garage. Grace pulled Lily close, the girl's small hand finding Ethan's sleeve one last time. "You won't let them take us, right?" she whispered, trust shining through her fear. He squeezed her shoulder, the gesture of vow. "Not while we ride." Outside, thunder rolled in tandem with the engine's growl, as the convoy prepared to stand ground. The corruption's roots ran deep, feeding on broken promises, but tonight the iron oath would sever them, one loyal stand at a time. Deeper into the night, as the rain eased to a drizzle, a figure emerged from the shadows near the access road. Not an enforcer, but a ghost from Ethan's past. Carla Ruiz, the deputy from the station, slipped through the trees, her uniform sodden and badge glinting faintly. She raised her hands in surrender as Marcus intercepted her, his bulk a wall of caution. "Easy," she said, breath ragged. "I'm not here to bust you. That kid, Lily, her story's bigger than debts. Victor's crew isn't just shaking down shops. They're running something darker, snatching up strays to flip for labor on those mill expansions. I turned a blind eye once after they leaned on my family, but seeing her with you, it woke something." Ethan approached, the group forming a tight circle under the garage's overhang, water dripping from the eaves like ticking clocks. Carla's eyes held the weariness of compromised souls, but also a spark of redemption. "The sheriff's in their pocket. Covers for the grabs, calls them runaways. Grace's shop was collateral, but Lily was the leverage. If you ride against them, you'll need proof. I can get you inside the records room tomorrow before dawn." The offer hung heavy, a bridge over the chasm of distrust. Ethan weighed it, the oath's tenets clashing, loyalty to brothers, but justice for the innocent. Grace stepped forward, her voice firm. "Do it, for the promises we broke and the ones we can keep." As the group dispersed to watch shifts, Ethan lingered with Carla, the storm's aftermath leaving a hush broken only by distant thunder. Her confession peeled back layers of Dusthaven's rot, mirroring the betrayals that had forged the oath. Saving Lily meant allying with unlikely shadows, testing the bonds of chosen family against the pull of old wounds. In the quiet, Lily slept soundly on a cot, her bouquet of wilted flowers tucked beside her like a talisman. Ethan watched her, the weight of impending dawn pressing in, the moment when honor would demand they ride not from danger, but into its heart. If this tale's already gripping your heart, smash that like button now. It fuels stories like this reaching more souls in need of hope. The first hints of dawn crept through the garage's grimy windows, painting the concrete floor in muted greys and golds, the kind of light that promised clarity but often delivered harder truths. The rain had surrendered to a crisp stillness, leaving puddles that mirrored the Joshua trees like shattered skies. Inside, the air hung heavy with the aroma of fresh coffee brewing on the hot plate, mingling with the earthy dampness seeping from leather jackets draped over tool benches. Ethan stood by the door, arms crossed, his silhouette framed against the emerging light, watching as Carla Ruiz sketched a rough map on a scrap of paper. Her pen scratched softly, outlining the sheriff's station's back entrance, a path she'd walked in secret compliance too many times. Lily stirred on her cot in the corner, bundled in a spare blanket that swallowed her small frame, her breathing even and deep, untouched by the undercurrents swirling around her. Grace sat nearby, one hand absently stroking the girl's hair, her eyes fixed on the map with a mix of resolve and regret. The reunion had bridged old chasms, but the weight of shared history pressed in. Promises made in their father's shadow, vows to rise above the scandals that had branded their name. "You sure about this, Carla?" Grace asked, her voice a quiet thread in the hush. The deputy looked up, her face etched with lines earned from years of looking away. "No choice left. I've covered for them long enough. Debts on my own kin, threats that bend you until you break. Lily's the line I won't cross." Ethan nodded, folding the map into his vest pocket, the paper crinkling like a fragile oath. The iron oath had taught him to trust sparingly, forged in the fires of brothers who'd given everything only to be betrayed by those in badges. Marcus leaned against a workbench, polishing a wrench with deliberate strokes, his presence a steady anchor. "We ride light, me, Ethan and Joshua. Rest hold the fort here, no guns, no noise, just eyes and truth." The plan was simple. Slip into the records room under Carla's guidance. Unearth documents tying Victor's crew to the disappearances, the runaways that masked a pipeline of coerced labor for the mill's unchecked sprawl. Proof enough to shatter the sheriff's complicity, to honor the informant kid's silenced cry from years past. As the group moved with hushed efficiency, securing the garage's perimeter, Ethan knelt beside Lily one last time. She blinked awake, rubbing her eyes, the wilted daisy from her bouquet still clutched in her fist like a lucky charm. "Are you going somewhere?" she murmured, her voice thick with sleep, small enough to pierce the armor of resolve around his heart. He smiled faintly, the expression softening the scars on his face. "Just a quick ride to fix things for good. You stay with Aunt Grace, tell her stories about the flowers you sold." Lily nodded, her trust a quiet gift, and reached out to tuck the daisy into his beard. In that touch, Ethan felt the echo of his own lost child, the one fate had stolen before breath could fill lungs, fueling the fire that drove him now. The pre-dawn air nipped at their skin as Ethan, Marcus, Joshua, and Carla mounted up, engines purring low to avoid shattering the fragile peace. The convoy's core splintered for this, leaving the others, Nathan and the rest, to guard Grace and Lily with vigilant silence, bikes positioned like sentinels under the trees. They rolled out in tight formation, headlights dimmed to slits, the road unfurling like a vein toward Dusthaven's heart. The town slumbered under a veil of mist, street lamps casting hazy pools that distorted shadows into lurking forms. Carla led on her unmarked cruiser, weaving through back alleys where potholes splashed faintly, the scent of wet asphalt rising like a warning. At the station, the lot was empty save for the sheriff's patrol car, its hood still warm from a late-night prowl. Carla killed her engine first, gesturing them to a side gate half hidden by overgrown brush, the metal cold and slick under gloved hands. "Service door, keys under the mat. Records are in the basement, file cabinets marked by year. Look for missing persons logs from the last 2 seasons." Her whisper carried the tremor of crossing a threshold, from enabler to ally, redemption's first step in the dim light. Ethan followed, boots silent on the dew-kissed grass, his senses attuned to every creak and rustle, the distant bark of a stray dog, the faint hum of a generator behind the building. The door yielded with a soft click, admitting them to a narrow hallway lit by a single emergency bulb, its red glow pulsing like a heartbeat. The air down here was cooler, musty with the dust of forgotten files and the faint metallic tang of old ink. They fanned out among the cabinets, drawers whispering open under careful pulls, papers shuffling like secrets reluctant to surface. Marcus scanned the logs, his brow furrowed, while Joshua stood watch at the stairs, a shadow among shadows. Ethan rifled through a stack labeled unresolved cases, his fingers pausing on a faded report, A grainy photo of a boy, not much older than Lily, listed as runaway, date matching the nightmare from his past. Notes scrawled in margins, connections to mill foreman, payments rerouted through shell accounts, painting a picture of systemic theft, lives bartered for land and profit. "Got it," Carla breathed, holding up a ledger, her face illuminated by a penlight's beam. Entries detailed relocations, code for the grabs, names crossed out like erased futures, Victor Kane's signature looping at the bottom like a serpent's tail. Ethan's pulse quickened, the pieces locking into place. Sarah's desperation, Grace's shopper's bait, Lily as the final pawn in a game rigged against the vulnerable. But triumph soured fast. A floorboard creaked above, footsteps echoing down the hall, heavy and deliberate. Joshua signaled, eyes sharp. "Company, now." They froze, the basement suddenly a trap of steel drawers and dim corners. The door at the top swung open, flooding the stairs with fluorescent glare, and Victor's voice slithered down, laced with mock surprise. "Well, look what the dawn dragged in. Deputy Ruiz, entertaining guests." He descended slowly, flanked by two burly figures, mill hands by their grease-stained shirts, their presence filling the space like smoke. Carla backed against a cabinet, hands raised, but Ethan's stance shifted, unyielding, the folder clutched like a weapon of light. Marcus moved to flank, Joshua drawing a tire iron from his belt, not for strike, but presence, the oath's quiet thunder. Victor's smirk faded in the tension, eyes darting to the papers. "You think scraps of paper change anything? This town's bought and paid for. Sheriff's on speed dial." But doubt flickered. The biker's arrival had stirred ripples, and now, with proof in hand, the web trembled. Ethan stepped forward, voice steady as desert stone. "It changes everything. For the kids like Lily, like that boy years back, promises get kept, Victor, even the ones you buried." The air crackled with standoff, no blows yet, just the weight of moral lines drawn in the dust of deception. Upstairs, engines rumbled faintly, reinforcements from the garage, loyal hearts riding to the call. As the first rays pierced the small basement window, casting long shadows that danced like specters of accountability, Ethan felt the oath's core ignite. This wasn't vengeance. It was justice's slow burn, redeeming the silenced through unyielding honor. Victor hesitated, phone in hand, the standoff teetering on the edge of explosion. Lily's daisy, tucked in his pocket, pressed like a reminder. Some bonds outlasted the dark, pulling light from the depths. The road to full reckoning stretched just ahead, demanding one final stand for the family forged in thunder and truth. The basement air thickened with the standoff's electric hush, the fluorescent spill from the stairs clashing against the penlight's narrow beam like spotlights on a stage of reckoning. Victor Kane's face twisted in the half-shadows, his phone gripped like a lifeline, thumb hovering over the screen as if one call could summon the town's crooked shields. Flanking him, the two mill hands shifted uneasily, their heavy boots scraping the concrete, eyes darting between the biker's unyielding forms and the damning ledger in Carla's trembling hands. Ethan stood at the center, the folder of reports tucked under his arm, its edges worn like the scars of forgotten fights. Marcus flanked him on one side, tire iron loose in his grip, not raised, but a silent testament to the oath's quiet strength. While Joshua covered the rear, his breath steady, watching the stairs for any deeper intrusion. "You've got no play here, Harlan," Victor sneered, his voice echoing off the file cabinets like a hollow bluff. The scent of damp paper and rust hung heavy, mingling with the faint ozone of tension, as if the air itself braced for fracture. "Those papers, shredded by noon, and your little roadshow? Sheriff's en route, end of the line for meddlers." But his eyes betrayed him, flicking to the window where dawn's gold edged the grime, illuminating the distant rumble of approaching engines. The oath's reinforcements, loyal as the steel they rode, closing the circle without a shot fired. Carla pressed back against the cold metal drawers, her badge a weight she'd finally shed, whispering, "It's over, Victor. The logs don't lie. The grabs, the relocations, lives stolen for your boss's sprawl." Ethan's gaze locked on Victor's, unblinking, the weight of old ghosts pressing in. The informant boy from years past, whose warnings had dissolved into silence under threats like these. That kid's face, grainy in the file, mirrored Lily's innocence, pulling at the promise Ethan had made in blood and ink, to shield the voiceless, to mend what wars and betrayals had torn. "End of the line?" he echoed, his voice low and gravel steady, carrying the desert's vast patience. "Nah. This is where promises hold. The ones you broke for profit, the families shattered, kids like Lily bartered away. We ride for them, not against you. Hand over the phone, walk away clean. Truth's got its own thunder." Victor's laugh barked short, but it cracked at the edges, the two hands exchanging uneasy glances as the upstairs door rattled faintly. More footsteps, not reinforcements, but the sheriff himself, drawn by the night's ripples. The man lumbered down, paunch straining his uniform, face flushed under the brim of his hat, the air shifting with his cologne-soaked authority. "What in blazes is this circus?" he growled, eyes narrowing on the group. Then widening at the ledger, Carla thrust forward. "Ruiz, you pulling stunts in my house?" She met his stare, chin lifting, the spark of redemption burning brighter. "Your house, Sheriff? Or their puppet show? These files, every runaway tied to the mill, payments funneled through Victor's crew, Sarah's debt, Grace's shop, Lily on that roadside. It all leads here." The sheriff's bluster faltered, his hand twitching toward his radio, but Marcus stepped forward, tire iron tapping lightly against his palm. A rhythm of restraint, not rage. Outside, the engines swelled to a unified growl, 32 bikes encircling the station like a living fortress, their riders dismounting in synchronized silence, vests gleaming wet from the night's remnants. Joshua slipped to the window, signaling all clear, as the first rays pierced fully, bathing the basement in unforgiving light. Victor's phone buzzed, an incoming call he ignored, sweat beading on his brow. The web he'd spun trembled, threads snapping under the weight of exposure, names, dates, the cold ledger of exploitation laid bare. Grace's voice cut through from the stairs, sharp and unyielding, having slipped in with the garage crew while chaos brewed. "It's done, brother," she said to the sheriff, her arm around Lily, who clutched the daisy like a shield, eyes wide but unafraid in the circle of protectors. The girl had insisted on coming, her small resolve mirroring the aunt who taught her pride amid the ruins. Dad's scandals were your blueprint, framing the honest to cover the grabs, but blood remembers. Ethan's oath. It's the promise we all forgot. The sheriff sagged against the wall, radio slipping from his fingers, the fight draining like dawn's mist. Victor lunged for the ledger, but Ethan blocked him smoothly, not with force but presence, the unmovable line of honor. In that suspended breath, sirens wailed distant, not local, but state troopers Carla had tipped off in her midnight turn, drawn by the file's irrefutable pull. Victor's hands rose slowly, the phone clattering to the floor, his empire of shadows crumbling under the light of truth. "You win this round," he muttered, but his eyes held defeat, the moral quake deeper than any raid. The mill hands backed away, hands up, as the Oath Riders entered, forming a corridor of leather and resolve, guiding the captives without chains. Ethan knelt to Lily, her small hand finding his, the daisy's petals soft against his calluses. "Fixed it, kid, flowers and all." As the sun climbed higher, casting golden veins across Dusthaven's awakening streets, the convoy reformed, not in thunder, but in measured roll, escorting Grace and Lily to a fresh start beyond the town's grasp. The sheriff's resignation hit the wires by noon, Victor's crew unraveling under investigations that bloomed from the planted seeds of proof. Ethan rode at the rear, Grace beside him on a borrowed bike, her smile tentative but real, mending fractures with every mile. The iron oath had stood, not in violence, but in the quiet power of loyalty, the family chosen, promises kept against the cynic's tide. Lily waved from the sidecar, her bouquet renewed with wild blooms from the roadside, a symbol of resilience blooming from wilted roots. In the desert's vast mirror, Ethan saw redemption reflected, scars honored, not hidden, justice poetic, won through integrity's steady burn. The road stretched open, horizons whispering of new calls. But for now, the thunder faded to a satisfied hum, legacies forged in the heart of silent courage. Thank you for riding this journey with us to the end. If this story of unbreakable promises and chosen family touched your soul, please subscribe for more tales that remind us of the light in our darkest roads. We'd be honored to have you along for the next one.